Hi guys, Mr. Jaeger here, and welcome back to Star Citizen, and welcome to part 2 of our glorious adventures in IAE 2955. As you can see, we've got the very nice Best in Show skins for the Ship Showdown event. Very, very nice. And better still, Best Boy Fighter Craft has been mentioned finally. Please, 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 CIG, if you watch this, can you please make this bomb rack capable? I will love you. And I'm planning on buying the ship again, so you're going to get money out of me. You're getting money out of me at this event, so please, 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 can we have bomb racks on the Gladiator? I just think it would be a perfect fit. So today we're going to be going through all of the different outside rooms for this event. But one thing I will mention just quickly, I really love this particular setup where you get to see the interior of the different roles that you can play and the other kind of elements. I really like this kind of introduction, and more of this, please, because I think this is a really good way to not only introduce certain roles and the gameplay mechanics, but also it shows that the world is living and breathing with everyone coming around looking at all of the different stuff and different pieces, whilst also having players around. I just think it's a really good way of bringing life to the exhibits. So as mentioned, we're going to be looking at all of the different rooms, which obviously kind of feels like we're going to be putting way more time on this video than it is on the others, but I will be going through at a relatively fast pace, trying to make sure that we get everything done right as rain. And today we begin our first room in Consolidated Outland, Crusader, and the Mirai series of ship. And I'm not going to lie, the skin for the C1 is perfection. It's probably the best looking skin I've seen for a Crusader ship in a long time. So, we begin our episode by talking about Consolidated Outland. So, Consolidated Outland is a company that has done something rather rare in the Star Citizen universe, which is they've been able to strike a deal with the Xi'an to share in some of the technical specs, thus making a dramatic influence on some of their ship designs, as you can see by the fancy glitched pixelated image here, or right in front of me, the cover quad, which is a very... it's a sleek enough Skim Vic. I'm not really fussed on Skim Vics, I'll be honest with you. I just think it's a skimmer, and it flies. And that's really all I can think about at the moment. Like, there's a couple of them I've tried in the past, which has done a bit, like, sort of okay. I know that the Dragonfly is one of the safer vessels out there if you're wanting to get into them, and the Nox is designed if you want to kill someone and make it look like an accident. But the whole thing of the Skimmervic style is just not my particular scene. But if you do want to muss around and have some fun whilst driving on planet side, I can think of no better Vics to have a look around in, except for, you know, actual vehicles like wheeled ones. But that's my own particular thoughts. Still, really impressive, and I think if you're a fan of bikes and stuff, this is pretty cool for you for that one. But the main money stay for this particular event is the Consolidated Outlands Nomad. Now, unlike its fighter style version, which is unlike its fighter friend like the Mustang, which arguably is getting better with every new patch, but obviously has still something to be desired. This vessel, however, actually gives you something to work with if you're breaking into certain logistical scenes. This vessel is a dedicated solo entrance to logistics. It's got 8 size 2 missiles on the side points, and you've got 3 size 3s on the top. Panther repeaters, really good sort of start there. And when the ship came out originally, I honestly thought it was going to be the main rival of the Avenger Titan, which we'll be seeing a little bit later on. But the main benefit of this ship, apart from the rather unique design and landing skim pads over there, is the 24 SCU-sized pickup truck-like design, which obviously then lends its name to why people call it the pickup. Basically allows you to carry a huge amount of supplies, and also, in certain cases, if you deploy it very well, an ROC, which is honestly kind of hilarious when you realize just how much... how big that thing is. But you can, in fact, drive up. If you're careful, you can drive up the ROC, park it in a slightly awkward angle, and you can fly around certain planets whilst flying with the back end sort of sticking out. Downside is you cannot quantum with it. So if you do decide you want to go to another planet, or you want to go to the other side of the planet, you will be leaving the ROC behind as you quantum into the distance. So do be careful on that. But no, the ship itself is pretty alright. I've owned one in the past, and I've got one currently because I have one of the more famous vessels coming out of Consolidated Outland, the Pioneer, which is still currently in the development, so we're not going to be seeing it for a while yet, and unfortunately I feel like I'm not going to see it until probably 1.0, which is depressingly far away. But depressing realities aside, this vehicle is a pretty solid choice for anyone who wants to break into cargo hauling. And for someone actually wanting to start cargo hauling, like 100% start into it, then this, along with learning how to play Star Citizen, is your next best choice. This is the Crusaders Starter Intrepid. It's got a wonderfully large size 4 gun, keeping it unique, as always, and also carries up to 8 SCUs worth of cargo. The entranceway is actually pretty solid. It's a little thin on the... always people steal the fuses. It's hilarious. You know it's an IAE event when the fuses get pinched. But yeah, you've got an interior, a small interior into here, sort of relatively limited maneuvering room. But this is more of a solo... this is like... Yeah, well, this is a solo person's dream, to be fair. Like, you've got actually quite a large amount of amenities to live in. Suit room. You've got yourself a rather nice, spacious little cubby hole there, so if you've got friends you want to show this off to. But one of the cool things, if I can find it right, is, well, apart from the fact that you need to do it in third person, a working mirror! Holy Jesus! Hi, I'm looking at you through the mirror. Anyway. Yeah, so apart from that, you've also got the nice little cargo bay, which if you open up and close up and do whatever, you can open the cargo bay, close the cargo bay doors, and carry a limited supply of cargo. Unfortunately, due to the location of the cargo doors, it's not quite as easy to put shit into it, but if you know how to if you start playing the game, you start getting used to it, it will eventually click, and you will be able to use it to the fullest of its capacity. But as an early starter ship with a very big gun, I think it's a very good start to introduce. I think if I could recommend a ship to someone to start Star Citizen with, this would definitely be one of the choices to list off on that, because holy damn. We will have a look at the C1 in a minute, but I'm going to hop to the other side. So, bear with. So, we have arrived on the other side, and look at this. Well, okay, model edition aside with all of the scrapes and the overexcited reactions of people, this is the Guardian MX edition. Now, the Guardian has multiple editions of itself. The MX is the heavy fighter variant. I believe the QI is the quantum interdiction method. And, of course, the normal bog standard Guardian is just a normal bog standard Guardian with a living room and amenities and stuff like that. Obviously, the Guardian MX, I feel, is probably going to be the most commonly used, as it is a dedicated heavy fighter with 4 Rhino repeaters on the front, and also a bunch of size 3 missiles around scattered somewhere in there. There's supposedly a glitch, a famous glitch, which if you double press the P button a few times, you actually get the lasers coming out of the front of the ship, like a TIE fighter, which obviously, since we've got the X-Wing in the form of the Scorpius, yeah, that makes sense. So, or I should say the Scorpius in, the X-Wing, X-Wing in the form of a Scorpius. I actually said it the right way first time. But yes, so X-Wing and TIE Fighter designs aside, this vessel is absolutely... this is one of Mirai's heavier fighter styles, and I do like it a lot. Mirai is also a company that has some links with the Xi'an as well, which is actually quite surprising. MISC is and Consolidated Outland are probably the only companies that can really work with the Xi'an on some of their design techs. And when we go into the Xeno room, you'll be able to see why. But no, the skin on this thing looks absolutely incredible. The dark blue with a white and sort of creamy peach white. Yeah, no, I do like this. Mirai definitely nailed its theme very nicely with this. And speaking on its theme, we'd be hard-pressed if we didn't mention this particular ship. Now, this particular ship doesn't look very assuming, but this is because this is the racing edition. This is the Fury. The Fury, which was, I believe, the Mirai's breakout role from Starflight Industrial, Musashi Starflight Industrial and Concern, had 4 size 2 missiles, 4 size 2 repeaters, las repeaters on its bloody frame. Now, this thing doesn't have any bloody quantum drive or whatever, but it has these 4 rather large maneuvering thrusters. And the pilot, who, God forbid, he has to have a G-suit or something like that. The pilot, which, God forbid you ever attempt to fly this thing, would literally be a buzzing death machine, flying and destroying virtually everything in its path. And the scary part is that this thing is so tiny, you can fit it into a bloody freelancer's cargo hold. You could fit it in virtually any minor and small things. This thing has become a unit of measurement, akin to what the PTV is for registering cargo halls. It's that mental. And, like, there's a meme that goes around, and I've mentioned it in the past, but I'll always tell the story, that pirates would be coming up towards a caterpillar thinking that they've got themselves an easy score because the caterpillar's turrets aren't reacting or doing anything. And as the doors open up, the pirates think, well, the enemy must be surrendering because they're clearly not wanting to fight us. And then a whole swarm of these furies come out from the side, and the pirates just go... I dream for the day. I dream of the day that the fucking Furies give someone like these guys an absolute bloody nose. Oh, it'd be wondrous. Anyway, moving on to the best looking C1 skin I have seen in a long time. This is, of course, the C1 Spirit from Crusader Industries, a vessel that is actually kind of middling, I think. I've not seen a huge amount of these, but they're not they're uncommon, but they are definitely not as common as they once were. And I think because there's a number of other vessels that are kind of in the same spot, if you will, and they're just having to play for competition. But this is a series of ships that is a smaller variation on Crusader Industries, with an upgrade to its visuals of its gun, the M5As, which look absolutely chebois, is the word I'm going to use to describe them. They are really impressive. But no, the C1 ship, following a long line of its other vessels known as the A1 Spirit, are medium-style ships. The C1 being the civilian version with a cargo bay of about 64 SCU, which two size 32 containers could be plonked alongside it, and in these cargo grids, which actually you could probably take a bit more, couldn't you? You might be able to fit. No, well, officially it's 64 because you'd have two size 32 SCU boxes. You could, if you were being optimistic, you could try and drag a third one in the middle here, but that would be off the grid, so it would be a little bit dangerous. The downside of this particular vessel is, unfortunately, you will have to... the only entranceway on this vessel is through here, and the component access is literally right next to the entranceway, which means if you're getting boarded, then you're kind of fucked in that respect, unfortunately. But hey, it's here, and it does have a pretty decent internal cargo capacity. So if you are wanting to sort of do some logistical means whilst also having a sleek and seductive style ship, you can do so. And it's also got a nice little storage depot, or storage little thing, components at the top there. But no, internally wise, this vessel's pretty good. I used to be a major Crusader fanboy. But recent events and recent events as well as recent new ship additions and stuff has kind of weaned me off them a little bit. And I'm now more of I'm starting to fall back into being what my original heritage was, which was Drake Interplanetary and other, industrial-esque things, so Argo Astronautics and the like. But yeah, the Crusader Industries have definitely done well with this one, and I do like the A1 Spirit. I think it would definitely be a ship I will be getting in a weird way. I mean, as much as I'm not much of a combat guy, I think I definitely am a bomber kind of guy. So I would definitely be leaning more into getting something like the A1, just because then it gives me the ability to support and make ruin and salvage, which then I would then go grab with my salvage beams. It's the circle of life, you know? You make the salvage, you go salvage, you get money to then make more salvage. It's how we roll. So, we enter into the next room, and as you can see, we got a lot of things to cover, so we'll be trying to be as effective and as quick as possible. First, let's have a look at Grey Cat Industrial, with their lineup of actually pretty decent variety of vehicles. First, we have the MDC, which is a variant of the MTC, but I'm going to designate this as the Toyota Hilux. The reason why I say this is because this vessel, unofficially, I'm calling it that, has a massive, well, has a PDC automatic defense system on the back of the vehicle. This kind of just came out of nowhere, I'm not gonna lie. And frankly, it kind of surprises me just how, like, I don't know what the logic is behind this particular vehicle. It's cool, don't get me wrong, it is really cool. But I'm kind of I'm more curious now than ever, because this thing is going to see a lot of fucking action on org events, or when you want to have a few players want to lock down a zone. Now, I will also preface this by saying that recently the PDCs have, in fact, or PDSs, or the word terminology throws me off a bit, they have seen a noticeable nerf to their systems. So we aren't all in the green here. There is still going to be some level of pain. So it won't be as painful as what people are fearing, but this thing is, this thing can be set up, and obviously, depending on how much this vessel's going to cost, you've guaranteed some LTI tokens, that's for sure. So we're not entirely sure how much this is going to cost, but there is probably going to be a decent amount of... there's definitely going to be a decent amount of players who will be interested in getting this thing. The internals, in comparison to the first MTC, are quite small, so it's only a singular person inside this vehicle, but and doesn't seem to have a separate control for that. So, yeah, all in all, it's a cool-looking vehicle. The skin, I couldn't care less about, but it's a pretty cool-looking Vic, and I think it will be very intriguing. I'm personally quite interested to see just what kind of impact these ships are going to make when going into further editions of Star Citizen. Now, I could talk about the other things, other vehicles, in a second, but I think we need to pay homage to this little thing. This is the PTV. This golf buggy style vehicle has been in the game for more than 10 years now. This little devil of a thing, I remember playing with in 2016, 2015, looking at the tech demo for Area 18. Like, if you look back all those years, there are loads of little muck-around vehicles, and there was this little muck-around vehicle, and I was looking at all of the visuals and everything, but it's a classic. This vehicle is legendary in the Star Citizen community. It's a unit of measurement in terms of cargo space design. It is also it is utilized in many racing events. So if you're a fan of the it's also the inspiration. I say inspiration. It's also one of the main benefactors of the Vision Center's kart course when it's not hosting a Star Citizen event. So hey ho. Yeah, I will say, like, it's definitely a pretty noticeably decent vehicle, and it's one of the cheapest little things you can get. I don't know how many people have these things on a serious basis, but this thing is just, it's got the love of the community, and it's so funny, and it's so derpy, but it's so brilliant, and I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, I feel sorry for the counteraction, which is the STV, which is, I think, Star Citizen's attempt, or CIG's attempt to cash in on the love for that thing, and unfortunately, I think they've kind of caught it at a wrong time, because sadly, while it does have a fuel cap, which is kind of cool, and it does have a working fuel cap, which I think is kind of nice, sadly, it doesn't seem to have have attracted as much of a community's, has garnered as much of the community's love as the PTV has. I mean, I think as a racing scene, there's definitely interest around it, but I'm not really into the racing scene as much, so I wouldn't be able to comment on like whether or not people take this thing out for a spin in larger amounts. But still, it's a good vehicle. If you want to muck around with a friend on a planet and you want to do something cool, like do a touristy kind of stuff, then yeah, this thing is for you. Now, as mentioned, the MTC is the first edition from Grey Cat. And of course, we've got the Warning Lights edition. Let me just go back on for this one. So this is a dedicated reconnaissance style Vic, which has 2 seats. Kind of like it's got 2 size 1 repeaters on the top there. Kind of, you could say this is a dedicated for 2 players because you've got 2 suit things, you've got multiple weapon racks and the like. But I personally think it's more of a solo pilot's thing, because you've got the. Oh, okay, that's interesting. It's must be life. Oh yeah, it's a life support thing. So, in my opinion, I would say that this is more of a solo person's Vic, because the essence is the reason why I say that is because you've got two dedicated suit storage pods in which you can take the more advanced cold kind of suit versus the more heat-based suit. You can also have the means to store other bits of clothing and equipment and other jazz in the personal storage box, and you have the means to defend yourself should you need to do it. Now, I do believe, I don't know if there is a remote turret option inside the Vic. Actually, let's hop into the vessel to say the look. But overall, I think this is a really cool looking vehicle, which has the potential to be a vital scouting asset or a solo guy's dream to operate through. So let's exit, let's lights off, deploy, open exterior. Oh yeah, there's the turret and shit. Yeah. So you can deploy the turret, or you can just have it as off, whichever you prefer. But yeah, no, this particular vehicle, I think, has a lot of potential for anyone who wants to start off in Star Citizen. And part of me kind of for the future of Star Citizen, I kind of do hope that you work your way up to a ship. I know technically that would make it very boring to a degree, but I would love the concept of having a startup option that allows you to basically start with more or less nothing, and you start with, you can either buy yourself like a ground vehicle to work with, and you're just slowly but surely earning enough so that you can get a ship to go going, because that would be pretty sick and pretty cool. Definitely. So, now we make our way to the last two vehicles in the Grey Cat lineup at this point. And I'm going to kind of throw a preface saying here, because the ROC and the ROCDS, for some reason, there are certain communities of people who just absolutely hate on the ROCDS for multiple, I would argue, somewhat petty reasons over the ROC. Now, I'm going to preface this other thing by saying that I do not despise the ROC unnecessarily. I just don't think, in comparison to what the ROCDS offers, there are some objective-based benefits to having an ROCDS, but that does not mean that you should never use the ROC. I just think that if you have the opportunity to do more with ground-based mining for the ships, for vehicles such as this, you would have an easier and more fun experience with the ROCDS than you would trying to use the ROC. So, with the warning out of the way, let's quickly talk about the ROC. The ROC is a dedicated ground-based mining Vic with a size 1 mining laser that's like slightly bigger or slightly better than the ones that you would have with a handheld device. And the purpose of this vehicle, as can kind of see, is basically going around crunching up little rocks and gathering up the materials in the process. Now, this thing has seen a definite series of iterations and improvements over its life service, because originally I used to hate this thing with a passion. The reasons were as such. First, this vehicle was very top-heavy, and before we had tractor beams, we very easily could have flipped the vehicle, and it results in you basically wasting your time, because no matter what you would do, unless you were very lucky and someone was with you to push you back over, that was it. Your run was done. You've wasted your time. That you're now going to have to abandon the vehicle, take whatever cargo you can get out of it, and make your way back to your ship in defeat. And God forbid you haven't driven like kilometers away or something like that. So yes, it was very top-heavy, and unfortunately, due to the positioning of the wheels, it had a very nasty tendency to be very easily flipped. The other downside is because there's only 4 points of contact at any one time, if you're going over arduous terrain, again, the likelihood was you could flip and lose control or do whatever. The other downside was that this thing doesn't come with a handbrake, which means when you were mining on certain occasions, the ship would jutter to the left or to the right, and you'd end up having to almost push into the bloody thing, like by maneuvering the vehicle to try and get the mining laser to work without falling over or doing whatever. It was a pain in the ass mining with this thing for a while. Now again, CIG have made some minor improvements across the board, quality of life things, definitely with the wheel traction and everything. It's definitely better than it was. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely better than it was. The main flaws of this particular vehicle, I would say, that are awkward, to say the least, is the fact that this vehicle is not pressurized. So if you are, as you can see, that's not a fancy pants windowsill. That is simply headrest shielding. So if you are wanting to go into a planet with a hostile environment, non-breathable atmosphere or anything, you are 100% still exposed to the elements, resulting in your vehicle resulting in you potentially struggling whilst in dealing with lack of oxygen, lack of atmosphere, giving you a much more limited time on the planet trying to find certain rocks and bits of equipment and stuff like that, which, depending on how CIG is going to go, we're either going to have you just take off and land right next to the rocks, or you might end up having to go to an area that your ship just cannot go to, thus forcing you to go further afield. So that's another bit of a downside. One of the worst issues, though, with this ship is the fact that whenever you decide to go park your vehicle in either a Cutlass Black or a limited space vessel that can take it, and you get out of the ship without turning off the mining laser would shoot 90 degrees up instantly, buggering both it and the ship that you were on, making any kind of transportation job for this thing immensely more arduous and more frustrating, depending on how much you've been spending time-wise trying to, fly and do whatever. If you make even a single mistake, as we all are being human, this thing will make your life a living misery in that respect. I won't lie, though, this vehicle, as mentioned, having seen through the improvements, I can say that this vehicle is still vastly more viable in terms of ease of access, learning how to mine on the ground, as well as being able to enjoy certain other benefits. So again, it's got its good spots and it's got its bad spots. I think it's for an introduction to ground-based mining, more so than just running around with your mining laser. Yeah, no, it's a good vehicle, and I definitely would say if you're wanting to break into that market, that's fine. But if you want to do well in that market, you go with the ROC-DS. This has a number of improvements which makes the whole experience vastly easier and vastly more fun. The first major improvement is the 2 additional wheels, this and the lower center of gravity. This lowering of the center of gravity gives the ROC-DS a main advantage in arduous terrain, resulting in the vehicle being way less likely to tip over. In fact, I have yet to flip myself on when driving this particular vehicle, and I do really like that. It's a really awesome feature that I definitely am grateful for. Oh, the ability not to flip. The other benefit is that the vehicle is internally pressurized with this cabin. It gives you more time to work around things. You're not as desperate to worry. The main concerns will be whether or not your hydration and your food nutrition stats are going down, which at the moment we still don't know when they're going to introduce the feature for you to have drinks and stuff whilst seated. But when that becomes a thing, issues like that may become a bit of a thing of the past. Who knows? Now, the one thing about this vehicle that when people were talking about it, they were like saying, oh my god, that's really terrible, because admittedly CIG kind of fucked it up a little bit on the marketing side, which is they were talking about the ship being a 2-man vehicle rather than being a 1-man vehicle. Because when people were talking about the ROC-DS, they were like, yeah, you and your friend, they'll be great to mine with it. And so basically the poor nice driver tucked away in his cozy vehicle versus the poor schmuck who has to be on the mining laser whenever you find any decent rocks. Yeah, it wasn't the smartest of ideas to start marketing it on that particular stratagem. So, yeah, that was not that you would not want to duo this when it comes to mining on the ground. But what you can do, though, with this is that this particular platform has a raised area to it. So it means that rather than having to use from the cockpit of the ROC a limited traverse field or whatever, you've instead got a dedicated platform to be able to look down on the rocks and gather more resources from a longer distance away, thus eliminating the issue of all the rocks exploding and going behind the ROC, and you have to reverse around and fucking try and guess whatever. Instead, you can be like, right, I've got 1, I've got 2, I've got 3, and then I'm going to scoop up all the other bits and pieces as well. That and inclusions of like larger size box carry capacity for the ROC-DS in comparison to the ROC makes it my personal choice when it comes to traveling around in the verse trying to do any sort of ground-based mining. Now, obviously, the downside is that the ROC-DS is a bigger vehicle, which means that you will have to find a larger transport Vic. The Valkyrie is probably my go-to in terms of like transportation, but I'm fairly certain that there probably will be other ships that you could probably put this onto. And as mentioned, I'm not saying you shouldn't use the ROC. I'm not saying that if you use the ROC, you're not doing it right. I just personally believe that if you want to use the ROC, that's fine, but if you want to have a lot more fun and a more streamlined, easier to manage experience, the ROC DS is your girl for that one. And both are relatively inexpensive, so, in-game as well, so there's always the promise of decent return on them. So, unfortunately, we're at the part of the event that I'm not overly keen on. This is the Origin Jumpworks section. Luckily for us, it's a very small and very insignificant section, which I am going to try and breeze through as fast as I can, but still providing you good information, hopefully. So Origin Jumpworks, for those who don't know, is basically a rich person's an idea of certain ships. They have luxury focus in mind, with a particular taste for marble, white, and sort of that smooth, sleek silk sort of thing. So depending on your kind of particular palette for spaceships, this thing either looks absolutely gorgeous to you, or this thing looks absolutely ugly and you despise it, or this thing looks gorgeous or ugly, despise it, whichever you would say. But yeah, the Origin Jumpworks vessels, I personally am not a huge fan of. The entire categories of the vessels, with very few exceptions, I just dislike intensely. One of which, the things I will say I very much dislike. That particular ship is okay. It's ugly. I don't like it, but it's an okay version of it. But things like this, I just no. It's ugly. It's stupid. It looks daft, and I just don't like it. It just ugh. It's the future. It's the kind of future sci-fi program. It's the thing I personally don't like in sci-fi films, when they do these needlessly weird angled shit because it's futuristic. So clearly we don't understand what practical design mechanics are. So yeah, this thing is obviously a hover bike / racer bike thing. And it apparently can go pretty fast, which is like, congratulations, you've made something I have absolutely no fucks about, because it looks ugly as shit. But oddly enough, the Origin Jumpworks display is actually featuring two ships that I actually kind of like the look of. First of all, the 400i and the 100 series. So the 100 series of ships came out before the 400i, and it was one of the first Origin Jumpworks vessels that I openly admitted to saying looked pretty good. This particular vehicle in mind allows you a pretty decent visual over. This one being the 135, which carries up to 6 SCUs worth of cargo. For a starter ship, it's not bad. You've got 4 size 1 slots in the back there, and you also have room for an additional 2 in the back over here as well. But as you can see, it's very basic, very primitive by Origin standards, but it also does have a decent view of things, as well as access to not an unreasonable level of firearms. You've got, like, what, size 2s? Now, it's not cheap. Under any circumstances, any Origin Jumpworks vessels are not cheap. But they do, at least in this very limited form, have a versatility and capability to be somewhat more useful. This vessel is kind of just, I think it's like slightly bugged, or unless someone's just opened up the door. But no, this particular vessel is a dedicated exploratory vessel. So it's mainly for the rich man's version of it. It's compact. It's compact, and it utilizes a limited, decent-ish weapons on the front, and I kind of like it. It's one of as I mentioned again, it's one of the very few designs coming out of Origin Jumpworks that you can actually openly admit to saying, yeah, I actually kind of think this is cool. I was going to try and hop into the lift there, but yeah. So, in terms of navigational areas, it's not a huge location, not a huge vessel to go with. So if you're wanting to sort of muck around with some friends or do whatever, there are a couple of co-pilot remote turrets, accesses, and whatnot. Let's hop in. And we'll just quickly get this thing done. Unfortunately, this is the main cargo bay for the vehicle, and it decides, it unfortunately... Oh, is this also bugged? No, it's not bugged. It just takes fucking ages. You can kind of get a Cyclone TR in, potentially, or at a push, maybe the Ursa rover, but I don't know. I don't think you can. I think you'd be hard pressed to get that particular thing in. Oh, good God, this is slow. Anyway, so cargo bay with limited supports and everything else, heading off into the very loud, like monstrously loud room here. Ladder access with lift. Big fan of having alternative options for that. And then that's taken to the main bridge room with a very nice utility to it. Got a couple of spare rooms over here. And then, of course, you've got the captain's quarters with the fancy pants shit and the random decor and decorations to showcase just how rich these people are. Then you have the community area with a radar in the back. Looking pretty swish, not gonna lie. Oop. There we go. And then finally making our way towards the bridge, which has someone locked. No, it's just really slow. Which, yeah, again, the cockpit design and everything else is kind of blah, but it does the job. And I can't lie. In terms of like practical designs, this vessel does in fact do something right by giving you pretty decent visuals, 180 degrees, a little bit of the lip at the bottom, but it gives you a decent amount of view whilst also not being super like lacking in maneuverability for it. Just open this. But yeah, no, I'm not a fan of Origin Jumpworks vessels. Like, they just feel like it's like random wastes of time. There we go. They just feel like random wastes of time, which don't really serve any practical purpose. Now, in the future, we may start to see certain contracts coming up for transportation where we have to like take certain people and take certain people and take them onto like various sort of tours and shit like that. Probably something we're likely to do with Origin Jumpworks, and obviously the better quality trip you can give them with the better quality of ship, maybe even getting a higher raise limit or something like that. Maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't like to make a huge assumption on that, but logic would dictate that if you want to impress someone, you get them the fancy toys. And speaking of toys, let us now talk about some of the more famous and infamous elements in Star Citizen. Don't worry, we'll be getting to the other thing in the background. This vessel, which has the Hello Kitty version, or the Star Kittens edition of it, is the Drake Dragonfly. This is a skim bike with two size 1 shotguns on the front, which I'll go to the Drake Interplanetary ground miner here, so to do a little bit better. Yeah, so Drake Interplanetary is, as mentioned before, a little bit of a dubious company. If you've never heard of them, they basically sell to everyone, and I mean everyone, whether they're legal or not. And their vehicles give the element of just utilitarian to a T. It's like, does it need to look fancy? No, but as long as it works, that's all that matters. The Dragonflies have not really, since like a number of patches, Skim Vics have not really been used a whole amount. There's like a bug with them, or potential bugs with them, not entirely sure. There's not as huge a level of interest around them, but this particular vehicle is probably one of the easiest vessels to learn how to fly skim bikes with, because other variants or vessels tend to have a tendency to kill their owners, which in this vehicle's case you can also do too, but you'd be hard pressed, and it has a very much determination to keep you alive as long as possible. You have the ability to have both a pilot and a passenger, and as mentioned, you've got two size 1 scatter shotguns in. So if you're the kind of person who wants to use these to ambush people, then hey, you're in luck. Dragonfly has got your back. Now, this vehicle is both a really exciting thing for me, but it's also kind of depressing because it doesn't work as I hoped it would. This is the Mule. This is a thing that you'll be seeing quite a lot of in its limited forms over certain dockyards, certain industrial locations. And supposedly what it's meant to do is carry a bunch of boxes on here, as well as a few boxes down here. Now, I was hoping that in the future we would be able to store more boxes with this particular ship. So when I bought this thing and had a look into it, I found myself staring at it for a few good minutes going, because the design of the vehicle and everything means that you can only transport effectively one, maybe two, size 1 SCU boxes, which I was hoping not to have to do. Like, I was hoping either 8 or 10 SCU would be fine, but you'd have to get a much bigger Vic for that, which is honestly kind of a shame. I'll be being truthful, because yeah, it would have been so much nicer if you didn't have to worry about that. But hey, it's a good vehicle, and you can still stack a decent amount of cargo for it. But I obviously needed to move on in that realm. And speaking of moving on, we now have what I mentioned in the previous episode, a real challenger to the MPUV cargo vessels, which could potentially see a change in what players would use in terms of base storage locations, which is kind of sad since the MPUV never even had a chance to do that. It instead just was the darling child of lots of other people doing racing stuff, or occasionally doing something like cargo hauling. But this vehicle is based off the Golem vessel variant, which is the Golem Miner. A lot of players loved that particular design, and I think CIG cottoned onto the fact of this thing could be really good if we turned it into a mini raft, which, as you can see, even the design layout of the cargo grid looks fairly similar. So yeah, no, this thing can transport up to, what, like 64 SCUs worth of cargo, meaning that if you're inside a particular base location that needs a decent amount of supplies to craft something, to make something, to do something, this thing has got your back. And also, it's got a quantum drive, which the MPUV doesn't. So that's two major advantages against it. The big issue, of course, is that this vessel is much bigger than the MPUV, making it less likely to be able to be transported inside an Idris, for example. But it can still transport a pretty decent amount of cargo, whilst also not having too much a problem of moving it around a bit. And you could even do longer distance operations, having been filled to the brim with cargo. So, shit. It's not what you would call optimal, sadly, for the MPUV. But nonetheless, I like it, and I probably am going to buy one in game because, well, it's a Golem Ox, or mini raft is what I'm going to be calling it. I think, to be fair, it's not just me who's calling it that. I think a few other people as well. But yeah, no, the mini raft is going to be one of the vessels that will be featuring quite a bit in the future, I'm sure, when it comes to clan work. So, we have a new vessel to talk on. One which is, I mean, unlike, okay, when I say new, I mean that's new, but that's a variant of a ship that we already have. And this vessel is a unique one, to say the least. This is the Drake Clipper. It's kind of come out of the blue. It was a ship that's been revealed like a couple of days through leaks before IAE. And I'm not gonna lie, it's weird. It's very weird. And at first, I didn't like it. I looked at it, and I did an initial tour of it and everything, and I saw what the potential. And at first, I was thinking, okay, this is weird. I'm not entirely sure what I feel about this. You know, already getting problems. Oh, someone's trapped. I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so the ship looked incredibly cramped, not really having much of things for that. And when I was entering into here, I noticed the capacity of cargo. So this thing has a 12 SCU cargo capacity. Now, I was thinking to myself, there's a chance we could get a decent amount of cargo up this ramp, potentially. Now, again, not entirely sure how one could do it, but you could, if you close the door, get a bit of cargo in. Or you could try and, you know, get additional cargo. It would be loose and potentially all about the place, but still, it would be there. So we have 12 SCU of cargo regardless. And this is the traditional way of coming in, I say. Like, anything that's powered, I don't really consider traditional. But this image right here was the start of my demise. Because this looks really cool. I like the engine style, the lighting for it, the air being sucked into the engine. It just looks really, really cool. And I'm like, and it's got gauges that are moving and shit. You know, it looks pretty sick. So, already on to a bad start. The next bit of bad news is the very utilitarian lever systems and stuff. It's like, it's very clunky. It's very limited. It just, oh shit, you know, it's one of them things. So the Clipper is basically a solo style vessel with a with a medical bed and a. Oh, okay. I wonder what this does. Oh, there's a fire extinguisher. Okay, so this is a dedicated solo player's background with a dedicated medical bed, tier 3, with, I'll move over to here, a crafting bay, an internal crafting bay, which we are already potentially likely to see in the near future. So already we've got a ship that is taking advantage of the latest features being put into Star Citizen, coming out for that one. And look, there's even a little door which opens up all the internals and stuff. I imagine this is for like when you're storing the medical gel or whatever. But still, it's a ship with both a medical position and a crafting bay inside. I would argue this is the first. Well, the Carrack. Yeah, the Carrack has this as well. But I think this is the. I'm going to use this as the first example of the intended release of the feature, because at the same time, I don't think the Carrack has a crafting bay, whereas this does. So I'm going to go give it the points on that technicality. And, oh dear, yes. The bugged out edition of this thing is, unfortunately, resulting in, unfortunately, 2 players are stuck. I'm going to try and see if I can help them out, but I think they're in the bugged edition, so there's no way they can get out. The Clipper is killing already. Oh, yep. Literally, as I say that, one person fucking killed himself. And he fell out! Oh, my God. Oh, no, he didn't. He actually just tripped. Okay, let me have a look, see. I mean, I'm trying. But unfortunately, yeah, no, it's bugged out, unfortunately. So we're going to have to just listen to the screams of the players saying, "No, help me!" Anyway, so going on to the 3rd floor. So there's 3 floors to this ship. You've got the life support and the other sort of details here. And you have access to the seat, which is kind of... It's a mixed bag on that one, I'm not going to lie. So looking at the cockpit of the ship, you can see there's quite a decent variety of... Like, there's like not a bad amount of visuals, but it's certainly not as like overly... You're not going to get a huge amount of visuals at the same time, which is a bit of a problem. But again, I don't think that's the intended design of this ship. Again, I think this ship is designed for someone to earn in their early solo experiences. We've got 2 little seats there for people, and then you have a living accommodation as well, dedicated bed. Like, this feels luxurious for a Drake ship. And they've got your personal storage here and everything. So if you were to start off with a slightly larger budget, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the dedicated sort of thing for that. And this is obviously the components room, alongside some of the other bits and pieces, which is pretty cool. And a first in Star Citizen, a dedicated trapdoor button. Whee! Thud. Which you can access from up above and below, which is kind of cool. So, oh look, someone actually got them up as well, I think. I don't know how, but they did. So, yes, the Drake Clipper, it has a decent variety of weapons. And it also has this, when it does have a functional system, there is its elevator access point, which, yeah, at the point that I just sort of discovered the lift coming down, I actually didn't notice this when I first walked across. I just thought it was just a random panel. So I went up the stairs thinking this is the only entrance way to come in. So when I finally had a look at the elevator, and then I saw some of the other stuff, my brain was like, oh, shit. I like this thing. I got the smile. There's a particular smile that you give when you're playing, when you're looking at certain ships, and that's the smile of a, oh, I actually like this. This is cool. And that's when, unfortunately, I fell from grace, which is very frustrating. But no, so the weapon component, I've tried looking on some of the websites for information, and it's very limited at the moment, at the time of the recording. There's actually, you go on Star Citizen Tools, and there's bugger all information, apart from it's a ship and it's Drake. So we've got 2 size 2 Mantis repeaters located at the front here. We've also got 2 size 3 Omniskis, which are pretty mental. And then we've got a bunch of size 2, we've got actually a complement of size 1, 2, and 3 missile racks. We've got size 1 missile racks, 8 on each side here, then 4 size 2s, and then 4 size 3 missiles as well. So this thing comes with a few decent bits of equipment, for sure. And as, like, Drake Interplanetary Craft go, it's really interesting. Like, it's captured the eyes of the community, and there are loads of people who are getting really excited about it. And I can't lie, while I'm not desperate to get this ship, I am curious to see how it will fare when it goes live. Because a lot of people tend to sort of look at a ship and then they go, oh my god, this thing's going to be amazing when it goes out. And then when it does finally come out, it kind of is a bit like, And it doesn't have as much of an impact as you think it would be. Like, for example, the Mantis. People feared that thing was going to become a real big troll source because people were going to get intercepted a lot and whatever. But in actuality, it doesn't happen nearly as much as you think it does. Or like Pyro, for example. People think that traveling to Pyro is the scariest thing a player can do because it's just going to, as soon as they go across the other jump gate through to the Pyro system, they're going to get ganked. And like, yes, you hear the horror stories of that, but nowhere near does that happen enough times. Arguably, you get attacked more in Stanton by pirates than you do in Pyro, which is ironic, really. It's just a smidge. Though I imagine a lot of the pirates this year will be spending a lot of their time in the Nyx system, because Star Citizen has 3 systems. I can say that in a sentence and not jokingly say, nah, not really. I'll be like, no, it does, and we're getting it soon. We're getting a planet with that soon, and it's fucking amazing, because it's Levski. I love it. So, as we make our way to the last 2 rooms in this section, I am going to briefly mention about this thing. This is Musashi Industrial Starflight and Concern's Hull C ship. Now, we're not going to see this in-game for the IAE event, but we are going to see its representation, because in the announcement for 4.4, we finally get an ability to use the exterior cargo elevators in every sector now, which is, in my opinion, one of the better things to come out with 4.4. Apart from Nyx being obviously a thing, we now have the ability to hop into the game, utilize the Hull C ships, and load our cargo on an external level. Or, in other regards, you may even have a case of you're flying out in space and you can unload your containers from the Reclaimer, for example, and immediately get them refined. Or you could do the same for your mining operations or anything like that. I just want to say, if anyone from CIG watches this, thank you. Thank you so much. I honestly expected to see this in 4.4.x, and the fact that you didn't, and you've given us at least 8 freight elevators on all the other sides, muchas gracias. Seriously. Thank you. Anyway, on to the next bit. So, we enter into the Xeno room, and as you can see, there's quite a wide variety of different designs and different mindsets from all of the different species inside Star Citizen, both friendly and not so friendly. I personally am not a huge fan of Xeno-style ships, but I can't deny that there are some that do have a bit of an appeal, or at least they look good. And this one, being made by the company of Esperio, which is not the best locations to place the light, because it just looks like it's got a zit of doom on there. This vessel is the Talon. It is a singular seat fighter craft with 2 size 4 deadbolt cannons on the sides and about 4 size 2s, though I'm thinking there's a few more on the top because memory serves correctly. But this is the dedicated gun variant of the Talon styles of ship. What we have for this particular skin design is actually pretty solid, but yeah, the Tavaran style of ships are very avian-like. Same goes for the Prowler. Now, this particular vessel is the Prowler Utility. Came out earlier this year, having 32 SCUs worth of cargo inside. It's essentially the same ship, just instead of having 10 men to being able to sort of step outside, you've instead got these little cargo grids to add a stealth ship component, which, okay, fair enough. I wouldn't exactly say it's my particular cup of tea, but I can appreciate... Oh, I guess it wasn't his cup of tea either. Oh dear, the synergy. It was poisoned! But no, the synergy... But yeah, the particular... Yeah, no. The ship is designed with the stealth in mind, and obviously if you're wanting to sneak something behind enemy lines, fair enough. But in all honesty, I don't know. I personally don't like it. I think it's just a variant, which CIG do like to make their variants of ships. So it's just another sort of use for it in that respect. But hey, you know, if it works, it works. And I'm always happy to be wrong in those particular circumstances. But as I said, if you want a cargo ship with a decent set of guns and equipment, brilliant. Though I can already see the deployable cargo little things on the side there. So those do deploy like that. It's literally just a cargo variant. Okay. Well, we'll get to the scary ship in a second, but I want to go through all the useless shit first. So, the Sulin. This is more of an experiment than, well, in my opinion, this seems more of an experiment than an actual practical ship design. This is a starter ship for those wanting to have a harder time of it, in this form of very limited amounts of cargo, about 8 SCUs worth of cargo, same as the Titan Avenger, but in a very odd and difficult way. And then you have the other issue, if I can open this thing up. Yeah, so this thing is designed of Xi'an technology, the turtle species that just doesn't seem to quite like humanity, which is understandable, because I don't like them. But no, the design template for this ship is very intriguing and unique, upon the sense that it's basically... let me look, see, we'll go for the cabin. So this particular ship design is... there we go. Is unique in the sense that it is quite compact, but also very... basically, it's landed down... Oh, hello, there's some rando there. I'm just going to... Oh, cool. He's just in the cockpit. It's cool. There you go. I'll let him have a wander out. But yeah, so this is basically the cockpit design. So rather than having a traditional ship design like any normal person would, they would put themselves... A pilot would put themselves in this seat and head up to the top there. And then the ship would take off from a vertical standpoint. I love the fact that we have a human fire extinguisher just plonked there. It's like, nope, fuck you. And there's me out of this thing. So yes, the ship is designed to take off from a vertical standpoint and land from a vertical standpoint. Do you see the problem that you have here? You can't land with shit behind you, making it very difficult for you to really easily navigate or land in certain locations. It's not very good, I'll be honest with you. At least, in my opinion, again, I realize I'm shitting on it quite a bit, but in terms of if that was the first ship that you ever flew in Star Citizen, I think you might have a bad experience with Star Citizen. Moving over to another Xeno species construction, we have the company known as Aeoppa, with the most deadliest weapon in the galaxy ever created, the Nox. The Nox is an incredibly fast, very efficient skim bike with the capacity to murder every single owner it ever goes near. This thing has very, very limited terms of stability, and unfortunately, as a result, if you're not careful, you can easily guide this fucking thing into the ground where it will promptly explode, turning you into mush. This vessel, the Santok Yai, is I've not seen it a lot since its introduction, so I've not really seen it in combat, but those look like size 4s. Yeah, those look like size 4 cannons. And basically, the Santok Yai is a dedicated medium fighter from Aeoppa, along the same lines as the... Yeah, along with the same... In the same line as the Kartual, which is a finger quote light fighter, but because this is Xi'an technology, they have the ability to do a lot of impressive things. We have a lot of the capacity to do some pretty scary things with a limited amount of space, and that's what it looks like when it's deployed. So the Xi'an know what they're doing when it comes to fighters, which makes them very much an adversary worth studying for sure. And speaking on potential adversaries, but still not in the same respect, is the Banu's Defender with a very badly positioned. It looks like he's happy. He's like, yay! This is the Banu Defender. This was the first ever Xeno ship that I saw when I first started playing Star Citizen. I don't know if the Kartual had been released already or not, but this was the first Banu ship I saw being released. This vessel has two size 3. No, size 2. It was size... bollocks to it. I'm going to have to look it up. Right, it was size 3. Why is it? I don't know why my brain always looks at that and goes, "Oh yeah, that's a size 2." The fucking bane of me. But yes, we have 4 size 3 direct hit scan weapons. Now, this particular ship was actually quite lethal when it first came out, but not for the ship itself, but the weapons on that thing. These weapons were basically, people would buy this ship, and then they would take the weapons off and put them onto other combat ships to make them even deadlier. The Arrow, for example, was one of the ships that very much benefited from this thing. And yeah, it's not a pleasant sight to deal with, for sure. In terms of taking damage and all that respect. The Banu Defender, I've been into it a number of times, so we won't need to worry about doing that kind of thing. But the Banu Defender basically has quite a decent amount of... It's a dedicated fighter platform from the Banu, who would utilize this alongside their Banu merchantmen to... It's like a clan ship and a clan defender as well, which obviously the Banu Defender is... Yeah, you get what I mean. The Banu style of ship design is very organic in its approach, very much so. And this vessel, we're going back to the Xi'an, but unlike this vessel, which is not organic in its design frame, has actually seen a bit of an update. This is the Gatak Raylin. This thing can carry up to 320 SCUs worth of cargo, but you'll note it no longer. It used to have these weird hexagonal pod things, which do not seem to be a thing anymore. I think they've retrofitted the design a little bit. Yeah, it's up like there. You see, they used to have these things covering the entirety of this vessel. Now it doesn't seem to be as much, which makes me wonder if the Xenos are coming up with some other method for storage, or it's just a vessel that doesn't have a huge amount of cargo inside. Oh, wow. Yeah, look, there's the Men in Black. They had to change up their attire a bit, so they're now Men in Mohawk. Not entirely sure why they'd want to... no, yeah. Initially, I looked at when I looked at this model initially, I kind of wondered why they wanted to use a Gladius for that. But a friend of mine very reasonably pointed out that it's a size comparison. So it's like because people know the size of a Gladius, they use the size of the Gladius as a measuring point. Whereas I previously thought, wouldn't it make more sense just to use the Kartual or the Santok Yai as a measuring tool for that? But it's fair enough. It's fair enough. Yeah, there's the utility things for that. But yeah, moving on to the big new attraction for the Xeno side is the Vanduul's ship, well, the most recent capture from the Vanduul, which is, of course, the Stinger. This is a heavy fighter platform with 4 size 4s on the wingtips, 4 size 4 on the wings, with a couple of size 2s located in here, as you can see. Very nasty cannons. And then a native-style size 5 weapon, which known as the Wrath, which is honestly kind of, yeah, not very good. This particular Xeno ship is something that I look forward to facing in battle, against in battle as well, as this particular thing is of Vanduul design, as you can see. It does make me wonder whether Esperia is truly working with humanity or against humanity, considering the amount of fucking Xeno shit that, or how much dedication they are to making this thing as enemy-like as possible. But yeah, the other thing, of course, is you get this particular ship with the cockpit, and you're like, traditional, I say traditional, traditionally Vanduul method of entering the ship, which is you're committed to the fight, or you're committed to the ship, or you die. And yeah, not a huge fan. But you do get some decent visuals, and again, you've got a very scary-looking language with a whole bunch of things to type. They have made it human translatable, at least, so we know some of the languages and everything. But obviously, do be careful when operating in such things, because it has been known that the targeting systems for these vessels have a life of their own, and some could even say that these things have certain organisms, because they've been known to target any human ships with a red icon, and almost incentivize the ship to attack it without even the pilot's instructions. So do be careful there aren't many friendly fire incidences if you're working with other human orgs. So, we make our way to the last room in our second part, and we're presented with a very wonderful sight for all the military enthusiasms out there. which is, of course, Anvil Aerospace's recent delivery of the Paladin, a dedicated heavy supporting gunship. We've also got the recent civilian, opened up for civilian use F8C, which previously was released in limited bundles, but now they finally decided to release the vessel into the wild. I think probably because they realized that they probably need to sell some more models, and the Vandal is starting to step up their game, so that would make sense. But we're going to instead look to start with one of the best starter ships in the game. I am, of course, talking about the Avenger Titan. Now, I've gone into length about why I believe this vessel is the best starter ship in the game, so I won't bore you, but all I will say is that it houses a number of benefits. Cross-section of weapons, cargo bay going internally, 2 points of entrance, decent visual on the top, and missiles as well to work with. All of these factors combined make this vessel an extremely beneficial and easy to grasp ship for anyone who's new to Star Citizen, and I always recommend this vessel is their first vessel or their first vessel they upgrade to, because this is the sweet spot when it comes to learning every option of the game without feeling like you have to spend a shit ton to get into. Moving to another vessel, we have what's known as the Sabre Peregrine. Now, the Sabre series of ship has been seeing a bit of a revitalization as of late. I think one with the Firebird, which is a dedicated missile boat, and we've also had a number of versions of the... Well, we had an older version of the ship get some retrofits and design, so it's definitely improved. This is a kind of... This is like the racing edition of the ship, so I think this is the first non-military style vessel that Anvil has done in its entire lineup, which is kind of intriguing. So this particular ship is just pure speed, and it's designed just to go as fast as humanly possible, which is a good thing because it doesn't really do much else apart from die if it gets shot at. But still, cool. It's nice. It's pretty impressive for that. So, having checked out the somewhat less civilian stuff, let's actually talk about the mainstay vessel for the UEE fleet and its upgraded form. This is the Hornet Mark II FCN. So the Hornet Mark II came onto the scene a couple years ago, and it landed a storm. I believe it was around, I want to say 2023, but also 2024, that there was an overdrive event, which basically allowed players to purchase the new Mark II Hornet, and you could do a series of challenges to try and to be able to unlock the to unlock a token that would convert your F7C Mark II to be the F7A Mark II. So I was able to complete that, and I was able to get the military edition of that ship. That ship will never leave my library so long as I live. And this thing is an absolute dream. But this particular variant is the more recent addition to the roster, which is the Super Hornet edition, where you have not only the pilot who flies around and does cool stuff, but you also have a co-pilot as well who handles the turrets on the top. Though, if you're flying solo, I do believe you do get access to these turrets, regardless of whether or not you've got a co-pilot with you. So you've got 2 size 3 repeaters on the top and on the bottom. You've also got 8 size 1 missiles, and then you've got 2 size 4 Revenant repeaters on the wings as well. A very impressive roster of guns and equipment that makes anyone's day go really shit if they get you on the if they catch a bad side, if you will. Moving to a ship which, weirdly enough, I used to gush at and go, oh, every time I saw it. And now I look at it and I go, oh, you poor thing. This is, of course, the F8 Lightning, or the F8C Lightning, I'll add. This is the civilian version of the latest vessel to come out of Anvil. I would say Jumpworks, but this is the latest thing to come out of Anvil, designed specifically to take on the Vandal's heavier fighter array, giving it a particularly devious advantage with a whole host of different weapon options and slots. I do kind of still want one because I feel like I would be a fairly decent pilot in it, but part of me also wants to get a military one because that is the ultimate tier of ship. But obviously, at the time of this recording, the UEE is recently unveiled this thing about 10 years ago, and it's still under non-disclosures for obvious reasons, considering we're still at war with the Vanduul. So, yes, unfortunately for my particular desires, I may never get to utilize the military vessel version of this, but I will at least say this. It's a very dangerous ship and has the capacity to do quite a bit. Hopefully the refinements that Anvil will do haven't made the vessel too lacking. I appreciate they want to sell more models of the Hornet Mark II, but the F-8C is the updated form of what we are expecting to see against the hordes of Vanduul, and if people aren't able to do what they need to do to defeat the opponents, that could be against the Vanduul, that could be a bit of a problem. Speaking on a bit of a problem, we're now going to introduce a vessel that's going to be causing many people to have a bit of a problem. This is the Anvil Paladin. It's the latest gunship vessel to come out. Latest gunship to come out of Anvil, and you can see the inspirations from the Valkyrie involved with such a thing, but at the same time, it still has enough of its own unique style, making it very appealing. Very, very appealing. She looks so nice, and I'm definitely thinking on picking one up at some point. I don't know if I can afford it, but I am thinking on picking one up. Primarily because I just love the concept of this thing being so good and wonderful and sexy and all of these wonderful things and above. It's lovely. I absolutely adore it. But this thing is quite the chunky beast, but it also isn't so wide and large and lengthy. It actually is quite a compact frame when you look into the actual internals. The space is used very efficiently, the right-hand side having about 12 SCUs worth of cargo, with this particular device being listed as a loader for future ammunition dumpage uses when the refinements come through. We've got component access in all of these particular slots, so no space is being wasted. On the bottom floor, you've got a stairwell which leads to a ladder which leads up towards the main pilots, where the co-pilots being able to hop into their remote control turrets from down below, which is pretty cool. You've also got, if we head up the stairs, he says ladder. I don't know why I'm thinking stairs, but hey-ho, brain not working. We hop into the pilot seat. Oh, the fuckers have locked it. Well, okay. Well, basically, in the pilot seat, you've got... I love it when people troll in this game. In the pilot seat, you've got the same sort of setup, but one of the things that you can do in the Paladin is you can use the armor up feature, which will provide additional protection for the pilot and the crew of this compact but really pleasant vessel. And hello, random scary thing. The mirror works, which is cool, but for some reason, it does this when you're in the first-person view. And because I spend like 95% of my time in like first-person view, just kind of looks a bit daft. So, in the interior, we've got a very efficient use of space. We've got we have living compartments on either side. Again, this ship was initially designed with 4 people in mind rather than just 1. And I imagine if we're going into a combat zone, you can't really operate this thing out of a single... like a single pilot could never operate this thing. But a 2-man crew, that's a different story. And I think that would probably be where this main ship's strengths could potentially lie. Now, obviously, you get a full crew, different story. But I do like the concept of having a 2-man in this with a variety. And it's definitely got reasons to have it. You've got 2 size 2... size 2. Yes, those are size 2. No, size 4. 2 size 4 remote turrets, which the pilot can activate. And the co-pilot can have access to quad size 5s on the top. And then on top of that, you've also got quite the variety of missiles as well. I want to say 8 size 3s and 2 size 4s. Because, Jesus, you want to fuck over someone, you use those things. Yeah, so this particular ship looks absolutely incredible. The armored skirts, when they do deploy, are really lethal. And as just combat ships go, I think this vessel has a lot of potential to be incredible. Especially when it comes down to its size and, you know, despite being really chunky and bulky, it's also not so big that it kind of dominates the entire scene, which I actually do like in a vessel like that. I kind of feel like I need to have a ship that is maneuverable but also tanky, which you do need on occasion, sadly. But that is going to be the final thing we're talking about today. That's it. That's pretty much the entire IAE done. But that's, well, done in terms of recording. But don't forget, this is like the second day at the time of the recording, so probably when this comes out, it'll be like on the Sunday, probably. So you've still got the rest of the entire week of the Free Fly event as well as IAE to come in, enjoy yourself, have a fun time looking at all of the cool shit, and getting all of these really nifty pieces of kit and ships to do, well, to basically to learn how to play the game and to enjoy yourself whilst doing it. I miss the days where you had the ship manufacturers on different days. I honestly do. I think it's a shame that we can't have that anymore. But I totally get why they do it that way, because it makes it far less stress to have to manage each of the different displays, getting all the other different things sort of set up. It's just easier if everything isn't kind of a one and done thing, and that if anyone who wants to rent shit can just come over here, Bob's your uncle, boom, you're all set. But at the same time, it is a bit of a shame that we can't get to enjoy the nice things, such as getting over to the different platforms and other bits and pieces. So yeah, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I understand why, but it still kind of sucks at points. But regardless, I hope you have enjoyed. And if you do like this kind of content, do let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate that I have said in the past that I'm not going to be doing YouTube for much longer, but I will be doing, I will be very much interested in doing something like this in the future whenever you get Invictus or you get IAE, because all of those things are really, really cool, and I do very much enjoy doing those at least. So thank you all so much for your support. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all the comments that I've been getting in my videos as of late. So seriously, major appreciations to all of you. You guys are a treasure I don't deserve, and I will catch up with you all in the next one. This is Mr. Jaeger signing out for not much longer, and I will catch you next time.